Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Ethan Poetic. Ethan's an author, speaker, and life coach, and he hopes to inspire others to live their best life. Welcome to the show, Ethan. It's really going to be exciting to learn your story and learn more about you.
Yeah, I'm excited for the type of questions you're gonna ask me. I was gonna say, do I need a lawyer just in case I get interrogated?
No, I don't do that kind of podcasting, actually.
Uh,
We just have a conversation. So tell
that
us your
sounds
story.
good. Hey, I am Ethan A. Poetic. I am a self-published author and everything she has said. My website is ethanspeaks.com. And of course, I'm a self-published author of a hardcover, softcover, ebook, and a newly released audio version. And looking forward to doing more serious inquiries about speaking engagements. My story started in coastal Pennsylvania, coming from a single parent household of five. And that was a big disadvantage because we had multiple different fathers. And we don't have a consistent person to lead the way. It creates challenges and barriers. And it shows that, unfortunately, for some women, they're not taking on more responsibility than they can bear. And along the way, I was growing up in poverty, where I was on welfare with the food stamps, the WIC, and everything else. But moving forward, my escapes were like video games and playing sports and help from the community. One of the key things that changed in my life before we get to the dramatic was moving from coastal Pennsylvania to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in the middle of my eighth grade year. I just couldn't believe it that I'm leaving everything I known in all livelihood to start all over.
Really difficult. I was a Navy brat and we lived all over the world. And every 2 years, we bundled it up and moved someplace else, sometimes across the world to different places. So it really does disrupt your life and any support system that you may have established. And growing up with one parent and multiple fathers makes it difficult when you're moving because you do set up systems of support when you're established in some place. So where you might have you might have overcome some of the challenges because you did have a safety or you had some sort of a support group when you were living in the first place. When you moved to the second place, I would imagine that it it was just a whole wiping the slate clean and we're going to start over experience. Was that kind of how it went for
Yeah,
you?
it was. 'Cause I only knew two people here in Lancaster initially. It was just an uncle and my second cousin. The other people that were in my family, I didn't know that I was related to them until an ancestry DNA test in 2018. And the barriers start, being unleashed and everything else. But along the way, I did, grow support, through sports with the coaches. And there was also a hall monitor who graduated from Thaddeus Stevens College. His name is Mr. Clyde E. Brown II. And he was very instrumental with helping guide me my last 2 years of high school with just being in his presence and learning some of the mannerisms that he had and was doing, as he was also a father of many grown adults and several grandchildren and several great grandkids of his own. But eventually, I ended up, towards the senior year, I ended up having a job at Arby's, and that's something I look back on and realize if I would have had a better support system, I should have finished, being a student athlete the last 3 years of high school, have a Division I offer, had my national signing day, and a whole bunch of other accolades and things moving forward. Uh, Moving towards 2011, where my life was at a cusp where I was facing a near-death experience.
Mhm. So tell us about that. How did that happen?
Has anyone ever like seen a car accident on the highway where it involves the cops, the ambulance, the fire department, Have you ever imagined how traffic is so backed up both ways that your life gets put on hold? Can you imagine just seeing somebody get put on a stretcher with a neck brace? Can you imagine how a car can get cut in half with the jaws of life? That was my car accident, head on with an 18-wheeler, while I was facing a mathematical equation of 99% chance of death versus 1%
Oh, yeah.
chance of life. That 99% chance is higher than somebody filing for divorce, winning the lottery, and many other things that we are systematically enabled to either experience or not experience. But it was the faith of a mustard seed of 1% that shows 1% can beat 99%. And, it was so much going on between an hospital ride, going from Paradise, Pennsylvania to Lancaster City to the nearest hospital, Lancaster General Hospital. I was put on several prayer lists. They were just unsure if I would make it or not with a high risk surgery.
How
And
did the
then it was
accident
just
happen?
huh?
How did the accident happen?
My driver just hit the 18-wheeler and unfortunately, things happen. And I was behind him and that mathematical equation that I was facing was just really stood out. It stood out so much that, I was on the operating table, a woman that cried because she thought I didn't make it. And then instead of just calling the morgue and the coroner, they decided to see if I wake up. 1 day passed, 2 day passed. I wake up 2 times. First time is when I'm heavily medicated in a subconscious way. The second time I wake up, well, there's less medicine, but I look around and wonder, where am I at in the IC unit? And that's the day I was declared a walking living miracle.
So what, I'm not sure how to ask this, but did you die?
I may have, because I don't remember the car accident.
Mhm.
Only thing I remember, and I say this all the time, is a gas station, a Olive Garden, then there's the Rockville outlets. The car accident, I mean, the best comparison I could say is like you're being at a networking event or a party or a baby shower or even a gender reveal. You're there, you experience it, and you remember it. When it comes to my car accident, I was there, I experienced it, but I don't remember anything. I didn't see no cops, no ambulance, no fire department, no heavy traffic backed up. I wake up during an ambulance ride. I just don't have a clue. Something
I don't
that's hidden.
I don't think that's too uncommon. My son got in an accident. He rolled his truck and he fortunately went into the mountain rather than off the side of the mountain. Um, and he didn't remember, he to this day, it's been several years. He doesn't remember anything that happens. He didn't know if he was in the truck when he was found or out of the truck. And when he was life flighted because he was way out in the middle of nowhere. He was life flighted to a hospital, and we went to the hospital. My other son took me up there because it was late at night, and we were asking him questions about it, and he just didn't know. He had no idea what happened to him. He was almost like not even sure how he'd gotten to the hospital. It's so weird how you can go through those kinds of experiences and you know that it happened to you, but you end up, it's like time just disappeared for that period of time.
Yeah, it just happened. It's just, when I drive by the car accident scene, I may get some chills, but the only way for me to remember is looking at a newspaper article where the car is cut in half.
Hmm.
cut more half than a grilled cheese sandwich. And just to see the wreckage and then look at the television footage, like, whoa, this is the ambulances, the fire department, it's the police, and this is all the traffic that's backed up. And I'm like, that's what happened. And like in the beginning, it just brought a chill to me, like, whoa, that's what I overcame. And I still got rehab to do.
Mhm. Were you were you incapacitated? I mean, how to ask that?
What do you mean incapacitated?
Did you did you lose your limbs? Were you unable to walk? Was it just a and I'd say just a, but was it a brain injury? Was it
Yeah, I
what?
had a concussion.
Mhm.
I didn't lose any of my limbs.
That's
It's
fortunate.
just, it was a high risk surgery. I
Mhm.
was sensitive to light. I couldn't eat or drink anything by mouth for several months while being on a feeding tube.
Mhm.
I was just thin as a pin and just wondering like what's gonna happen. But there was people keeping me in their prayers, coming up to the hospital, the rehab, at home doing psalms. Because they saw a brighter future than my present adversity.
How old were you when this
Lost
happened?
early 20s.
Early 20s? So what were you doing? Were you working at Arby's still, or did you have a
No,
different
I had
job?
quit that job maybe 2 to 3 months later because I ended up finding a better job at Ruby Tuesday, which was much closer to my home.
Mhm.
But what ended up changing my life was just realizing that there's a lot of people that believe I can overcome being on a feeding tube, this concussion,
Mhm.
and just being skinny. And it took several months of just patience. That is virtue
Mhm.
to the point where I kept my mind occupied on things other than what I was experiencing and suffering. And then one day I passed my eating test, feeding test. I was finally able to eat again. And then finally, they took the feeding tube out of me. Then I started eating hard foods, soft foods. People started taking me out to eat, and all I saw was just the beautiful waitresses, but I never saw the check. And then eventually, later down the road, I get my driver's license, start working again, and went to community college.
Mhm. What were your goals with the community college?
At the time, it was just to get in. So that was the original plan before the car accident. But unfortunately, the car accident caused a delay.
Mhm.
And eventually, after going to community college for some time, one day I'm inside the academics office, and the lady tells me with a big smile on her face as she looks at my degree audit, she says, I have more than enough credits to transfer, but also apply for graduation. And I
How did
remember like
that
it was
make you feel?
yesterday. It was great. So I wasn't sure if I was staying another semester or leave, and it just makes sense to leave while I'm out on top. And eventually, I remember like it was yesterday, I was working at this factory warehouse for the holidays just to stay active. And then eventually, I drove from Ephrata, Pennsylvania to Hershey, Pennsylvania to the Giant Center for my commencement ceremony. I made it 25 or 20 minutes before it started. I had my cap gown, maybe a tassel or two. And I saw a lot of people I'd recognize from college, some people from the community of Lancaster. And it just felt great to just hear my name proud, saying proud in a positive light. Pictures were taken, video footage. And then afterwards, we went out to eat. And then the next day, I went back to work. And then and eventually, I got approved to go to transfer to Millsville University. And I remember like it was yesterday, I met Dr. Teresa Russell Loretz, who was the head department of communication and theater. She chose my classes for me, and one of the classes I ended up taking business with a friend of mine. I'll say her name is Miss Garcia. And from there, I just took class after class after class, and eventually ended up passing on my classes in the midst of COVID-19. I remember a day like it was yesterday where I go into the math class. Normally, everybody's talking among themselves, but this day I see people had their eyes on their phones, and it turns out Military University, along with other colleges around the world, shutting down. And that's where all the classes were done online. And I was still able to pass my classes that semester. That was spring 2020. Following semester, did another math class, did an internship at a local television station, and people trusted me with just there's certain proximity. And eventually, I crossed the finish line where I graduated from Mills University. I had my own celebration privately. Then, spring 2021, I finally had a commencement ceremony where I was featured on WGAL and Lancashire newspaper.
Or graduating?
Yes.
Very cool. What did you get your degree in?
Bachelor of Science, Speech Communication, Minor of Broadcasting and Media.
So now you're working as a life coach and a speaker.
Yes.
Um, what do what do you do with the life coaching part of it? How do you
It
help people?
depends on the client. Like, for example, somebody might want to understand how can I overcome the adversity of not having a relationship with my dad? And those situations can vary. Like, for example, some fathers are estranged, some fathers are incarcerated, some may have died,
Mhm.
or some might be in the military and was gone for long periods of time. Or it could be a situation where a woman is not allowing her child to have much of a relationship with the man because he's already moved on to somebody else and he's not putting up with someone's drama. And it's just best to listen to what's being said instead of just thinking everything's a one-stop shop. And then from there, it's just a matter of just making goals, creating a timeline, and I do accept payments for my serious inquiries, and just take it one client at a time because I don't want to do groups. I rather just do it on individual levels.
Mhm.
And then eventually, if someone wants to go even further, I can refer them to somebody else who might be able to take it to the next level for them, who has experience of being a father who, unfortunately made the wrong choices with not being there and being present for their child, but also explain the journey of what they did to come back from it because they wanted it bad enough, change their ways
Did you ever
and
meet your
everything.
dad?
I know who he is. It's just a situation where, there was some drugs involved, alcoholism. But other than that, him and my mom, weren't together. He was already with another woman prior to, them two meeting. It just so
Mhm.
happens he met another woman while being with somebody else. And eventually it catches up with a person when someone decides to not make healthy choices, and that includes the women as well.
Mhm.
I'll just say, some women want to be moms before they want to be a wife. Some people want to be a wife before they have a college degree or a trade. And, sometimes it's the women choosing these men that may not be ready to settle down. And it also goes back to the relationship they have with their father or uncle. Because I realize some of the stuff that people go through is, some people think a person can read somebody's mind. Not everyone wants to read somebody's mind. You got to meet a person where they are. And eventually you have to be willing to understand that it's good for men to do the vetting process because most men know when they have a conversation with another man or teenager whether this person's good company or not. And eventually, either you get the approval or you don't get approval. but that's just life. But moving forward, my situation was just learning how to go from victim to victor and understanding that I can't make somebody do right by me, but I can
Yeah.
make a better version of myself. And it took some time to understand that this isn't my fault. There's some things that were going on that are out of my control. I never had the conversations with my mom. I had a partial conversation last year with my dad where, as he read my book, he or found out about my book and people told him, hey, I'm talking about the relationship. It's like the unspoken truth he never took the time to listen to. And, it's like, for example, I'm allergic to dairy foods, but he never knew I was allergic to it. But at the same time, since him and my mom were co-parenting on the best of terms, she didn't tell him. And that causes a miscommunication where my mom knows I am allergic to this while he doesn't. And then by the time he does know, it's kind of too late. But moving forward, I learned in life, as I learned through other people's stories, that you can still succeed in life and live your life without your biological father, whether someone's still present or not. It's just a matter of just not being a victim all the time. You gotta become a victor, or else you start victimizing other people, and the same thing that was done to you, you end up doing it to other people and then pushing them away to the point where people not answering the phone calls, your direct messages, your emails. It's kind of like this show called it's on A&E. Oh, Intervention, where if a person's caught up in their addictions or problems, eventually there's a heart-to-heart talk with all the people involved and give an ultimatum: get the help for this rehab facility, or we're gonna have to distance ourselves from you and not enable you no more. And at that time, it's up to the individual, whether it's a male or female or any gender they choose, to want to become a better version of themselves or pay the cost of being estranged from people.
Yeah. Usually people don't change unless they want to. That's been my experience. You can give them ultimatums, but if they really cared, they wouldn't be in that situation to begin with.
Well, it's just a situation
People,
where some people just don't take the time to address their underlying pain, whether it's spiritual, physical, mental,
Mhm.
or a past tense memory or repressed memory of something they didn't like get words of affirmation on. Because I realized like the psychological damages is just, some people turn to certain things to enable themselves.
Mhm.
And, some people like to numb things, but after the numbing's over, it's still there.
Yeah, it definitely, I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody has the right to live their life however they're going to live it, in my opinion. And sometimes the way they choose to live it doesn't really meet the needs of those that they're around, which includes children and parents. And as human beings, we have the right to remove ourselves from those situations. And I would suggest that most parents are still children in a lot of ways themselves. When somebody is in their 20s, they're not done yet. Most men don't really mature until they're about 26 or 27. And they're having children because biologically that's when we're designed to have children. And I had parents too. And my parents had their challenges, and my kids have had their challenges with me at different stages in my life. I had kids in my 20s, I had kids in my 40s. And the the way that those children were raised was different because I was in a different place at different times. And it happens with everybody. Nobody gets through childhood without trauma of some sort. My parents were young when they had me too. And they did things that I wish they didn't do to me. It just happened. I'm not so sure that I didn't pick them to happen, to go through the experience and to be able to share that experience with others. If you didn't have the parent that you had, the father and the mother that you had, you wouldn't be in the place that you're in right now. Your story would be different. Have you ever considered how that would have affected your life at this point?
I mean, I thought about it several times. Like, for example, I'm thinking, I used to think, oh, things would be much different. I live with my dad, but I realized when I saw my other siblings living with him, sure, they had more food, clothing, financial gain, but nobody was happy.
Right?
And then I look at my situation with my mom, it's like, okay, there's not as much food, there's not as enough money, but I learned how to make things stretch. But I'm still able to see my childhood friends in the neighborhood. I'm still able to go over at aunt and uncle's house, my grandma's house.
Mhm.
It's just more freedom to just go do what I want to a certain degree. But eventually, there's some things I wish should have changed. Like I could have went to maybe the Milton Hershey School where I could have had all my financial and other things taken care of. I probably would have been a more healed version of myself as a teenager than coming into my adult years. But then the cost of it is basically going to hurt. Milton Hershey School is not being around the people who are the root of it.
Mhm.
But when I do come back, but when I realize that when a person does come back from the Milton Hershey School back home, the problems are still there. It's just the people who are responsible for it don't want to take responsibility for it. Then also realize, like, if I know all these people here in Lancaster I was related to, maybe I was better off living with them. I could have done being a student athlete. I probably went to college sooner and everything else. And there's also, learning things much sooner than later. And those are some things I do think about, but I also think about if I would have stayed in Coatesville, I probably would have been part of a great sports legacy there for football and track, competing in pin relays, had the gold medals, chestnut championships. Um, but also realized, Lancaster and Coatesville is two different cities. The biggest difference is just there's more in Lancaster. It's more of a lot of entrepreneurship out here. There's a television station, there's a newspaper place, and then there's multiple school districts outside the city that come in close to the boundary lines. But in Lancaster, it's more a community base, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of mom and pop shops that are still around, a lot of family that I know there. Even when things, change with the steel mill, it's still becoming revitalized in a positive sense. And they are surrounded by multiple different school districts. But the problem is, half their school budget is cut in half by Avangard charter and collegium charter. Charter schools go get, money from a certain student's home school area that they live from. And some parents, some people want, they say better opportunities for their child or children. But ultimately, what it just comes down to is just some people just want different or experience different. I still travel back and forth to both those locations in good faith. So I still know a lot of people in both locations. But moving forward, I realize, it is what it is. I learned a lot of lessons on what choices to make right and what choices not to do wrong. Because I don't want my future children to go through what I went through. I want to allow them to become a better version of themselves and also become a better version of, making sure they are taken care of in certain areas where I may not have been taken care of.
Makes total sense. So How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you? And how can they find your book?
Well, here it is. Soft cover. I have a hardcover. I also have an ebook and an audio version available on major platforms: Amazon, Audible, Kobo, Google Audiobooks, iTunes, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and many other major platforms. The physical copy, the electronic copy, and of course the audio copy. Or if you're going to buy a book directly from me and I just mail it to you, and you can pay me through Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. And if you trust me with your PO box and or your mailing address, and I just text you the tracking number, that way we both know where the book is going at all times. Again, I value my services as a keynote speaker in my books because I put my heart into it, my resources, and I'm a business owner, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, life coach, and make an impact in people's lives. Our website is ethanspeaks.com for serious increase for speaking engagements. You just click on the consultation form, you fill it out, I review it. If it's a good fit, hey, I'm ready to schedule that 5 to 15-minute consultation. I have a contract ready. I do require a security deposit to reserve that date. It's just a standard procedure I learned. And the best is yet to come because there's still more room for me to grow in. I look forward to just continue to evolve. I look forward to continue to make an impact in people's lives.
Awesome. So, what's the one thing you hope the audience takes away from this conversation today?
That you can turn your adversities into your advantage. For example, I had a near-death experience. I could have gave up at any given time. I could have threw in the towel. I could have, not stepped outside my comfort zone when people were coming up to me at the workplace saying, "Is this you from the car accident?" So they researched me. I could have just said, I'm not ready to talk about this. I'm not ready to confirm or deny whether that's me or not. And eventually, life has a way of pushing you outside your comfort zone for success. Because
I
there is beauty in the struggle. And, a person can receive beauty for their ashes, beauty for their struggles. And for me, I could say mental health is wealth because you have to be willing to communicate about things, whether it's verbally, text, electronically, through braille or sign languages or any form of communication, because we have to be able to let go of certain things and continue to evolve because we don't want to be stagnant in one place. There's that. I want you to get out of it. And I also want you to get out of it that you're not alone in what you endure, because most of the things that we experience in life, there's previous generations that have already experienced it and overcame it, or those who decide to not outlast it. Uh, but moving forward, my social media handles on TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram is Ethan Poetic 23. On Facebook, LinkedIn, and my YouTube channel, I'm just Ethan Poetic. Then on my Twitter, I am Ethan V23. And again, my website is ethanspeaks.com, where you get to see a lot of news articles, television interviews. Purchase the book from me directly by sending me an email or click on the link for the audio version of the book or the physical or soft copy or electronic version. But either way, the purpose of this book was to inspire people to understand that life can be turned around from the most tragic situations to become triumphant.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us, Ethan.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and this opportunity.